Good afternoon. It's a great pleasure to introduce Shri Dileep Ranjekar ji. Dileep ji, as we often call him, and DR, as he's often known in the Azim Premji Foundation, has a BSc and MBA from Pune University, and he was a student of TISS MIR, which is the Personal Management and Industrial Relations, in the period of 1976. From 1976 to 2002, he has served in various industries of the Wipro, and from 2002 onwards to date, he is with the Azim Premji Foundation. Sri Dileep Ranjekar ji has contributed enormously to the field of education, primarily school education, and unlike many other foundations that go ahead and start their own private schools, the Azim Premji Foundation has worked relentlessly and continues to work even now in various state after state where the education indicators are extremely poor, teacher training is extremely poor, and lot needs to be done to strengthen public schools and strengthen government schools. And they've been very, very successful. And Dileep Ranjekar ji is the chief architect of how the foundation works on this sector. He travels practically the entire month, the length and breadth of the country, wherever their projects are, and often has enormous stories to tell about the experience. And most of these stories are actually stories of hope. Dileep Ranjekar ji is a great friend of TISS. When Professor Parshuraman took over as the director of this institute and went about actually interacting with all the alumni from all the batches across various cities, Mr. Dileep Ranjekar ji was one among the many alumni who came forward to give lot of inputs on how TISS should reinvigorate itself and reposition itself. And I think TISS owes a lot to its alumni for the kind of feedback that we received. Apart from our own internal churn, I think individuals like Dileep ji have contributed a lot. And Sri Dileep Ranjekar ji also is behind the setting up of Tata Institute of Social Sciences in Hyderabad. The support that we have from the Azim Premji Foundation and through Azim Premji is something that we will never be forgetting at all. And we thank the foundation, we thank Dileep Ranjekar ji, and we look forward to his speech and his insights. Thank you.
So, my dear students, the dignitaries on the stage, the parents of the students, and some of the people who have made it possible to be here. It's an extreme pleasure to be a part of this process because it has really enabled me to virtually rewind 40 years. 40 years ago, I was in similar function in the similar institute. The location was different. It was a more modest but very endearing kind of a location. And I must thank the institute, Professor Parshuraman, and all those who actually wanted me to be a part of this function. It's more an honor for me than anything else. In many ways, I'm not an emotional person, but in many ways, it is very natural for me to reminisce 40 years ago, and even today, the picture is very clear. The first day in the institute, the subsequent time that was spent, the invisible presence of Dr. Gore, the looming presence of two other people, Dr. Kaikobad and Dr. Panakar. And we were eternally scared in the hostel as to when he will come to us and he'll find a bottle of alcohol. And all those acts of jumping over the fence, getting up 3 o'clock in the morning with the screaming of Raj Kapoor, who used to be, in similar state as ours, It's inseparable. All these memories are inseparable. I remember the second day of my becoming a student here. I was nominated on some three committees. The chairman of the hostel committee, chairman of the dining hall committee, and the coordinator between the hostel committee, the dining hall committee, and the students' union. You can imagine. And then another 1 week, I was also appointed as the sports secretary. And coming from a small town like Pune, and actually I was in when I came here, I was in Ahmednagar. Uh, I was not able to understand anything, and this must be my first or second visit to Mumbai. But I had a godfather without knowing him. And those days we used to have these 5 people in the room, and there was this person called Vijay Narayanan, who was the chief jailer of Coimbatore jail. And he was doing, on deputation, his degree of criminology and correctional administration. Now it is subsequently called justice. But that time it was very clear, criminology and correctional administration. So for some vague reason, he nominated me on these committees. And imagine, for next 2 years, I was the sports secretary of Tata Institute of Social Sciences. And therefore, I was very faithful to my job. 1 to 2 was lunch hour, which I suppose even today it is so. 9 to, I cannot say 9, 10 to 1 was the lectures, because I never went before 10 o'clock. So, many of my classmates, one of them is sitting here, Aniruddha Limay, they remember me rushing at 10 o'clock to Madam Panakal's lecture with half the sandwich and one banana hiding. And those privileges were possible because I was also the dining hall committee chairman. So the Indian political values were very nicely imbibed. So when I got up at 9:30 in the morning, there was a hidden plate, not hidden, covered plate outside my door, which had an omelette, cold omelette, sandwich, jam, whatever. So much so that I ate 2 years, I ate cold omelette. Next 10 years, I did not eat omelette at all. So all these memories are possible only because I was invited here today. I remember as a sports secretary, another friend of mine, Dr. Narayan Hariharan, he is now a doctor. He has a doctorate and he is doing second doctorate in Buddhism. And Buddhism in Marathi can be pronounced in many ways and it can mean different things. So we went to the Chembu market and we bought some bats and brand new table, net, and many other things. And there used to be a badminton court. Actually, badminton court we started subsequently. It was traditionally known as LP. You know what LP means? LP is the love point. Essentially, after 7 o'clock, it was not so illuminated. The institute was not so illuminated. And used to have pairs sitting there and talking about the education that happened during the day. We used to crib quite a lot. The hostel facilities were not good, though actually that is the first time in my life I slept on a foam bed, which was provided by Tata Institute of Social Sciences. Nice bed sheets I got. So, but even then we used to crib quite a lot. This is not there, that is not there, the faculty doesn't understand, they don't appreciate. Why is it that there are only 14 days of leave? Why not 140 days? Those kinds of highly intellectual issues we used to crib about. Only after passing out and several years later, we realized what the institute really contributed to us. As a human resources professional, and as you probably know that, even within the same institute, the PM and IR, or now what it is called as human resources, HRM, these are two different cultures. They are driven by two different kinds of aspirations. Though we were not really, we were just 22 of us. And we were not driven by any major aspiration, but today they are driven by different aspirations. But even then, rubbing shoulders with the 180 people of social sciences, social work, and five other disciplines that time, it did indirectly develop certain things in us. Now I'm purposely calling it things, and it is difficult to describe what it is. The first time probably I realized that was in the peak of Wipro performance, and Wipro really galloping to certain performance levels in the year 90 to 2000, 95 to 2000. Around 97, when Mr. Premji and I, we happened to stay in the same guest house for about 2 years because we had shifted our office from Mumbai to Bangalore. When he expressed his desire to do something long term, something sustainable, something impactful, something solid, and something at scale, he asked me, what should I do? I was wondering, why would he ask me? So there's something that I would have conveyed to him in my interaction that he thought that this guy will be able to tell me something about it, that because he's socially connected. Only that time I realized the value. And after joining or after starting the Azim Premji Foundation, I realized the invisible inputs that I got in Tata Institute of Social Sciences more and more. And even now, I keep realizing that. I do interact with, she used very kind words and she gave a nice introduction. Uh, I do travel quite a lot. And I must have visited so far about 7 to 8,000 schools across the country. And whenever I go to a school, if there is a primary health center there, I do visit the primary health center also. And I find that 70 to 75% of them are dysfunctional. It's a sorry state of affairs. Wonderful concept. 1 lakh population, they must get free and quality health services. They created a physical infrastructure, appointed doctors, appointed nurses, had lot of equipments, pathology, everything. But today in 70 to 75% of the places, it doesn't work or it works at a very suboptimal level. To the extent that the people in that population, they have to go to the same doctor after 6 o'clock, pay money and get the treatment. So this is the uniform and consistent state of affairs in our country. We have no shortage of promises, programs and commitments. No shortage at all. Starting from our constitution, and I cannot say that you don't know constitution, though I did not know when I passed out, though we had a paper on constitution. Probably that is the reason I did not know. Constitution cannot be taught by having a paper. Constitution can be taught or can be familiarized with only by constantly linking our commitments to what kind of society we have committed to be. And all this just humane, social, democratic, secular republic with certain liberties, certain freedoms, certain rights. I interact with a lot of students. And one of the students I went to near Pune, between Pune and Ahmednagar, Shirur is a place. Some of you may be knowing that. It's a large institution, some Jain institution. And I was interacting with 200 students at the same time. Something happened to me that time, and it occurred to me to ask them a question as to, are you proud of being an Indian? And all hands went up. I realized my mistake. How can you ask a rhetorical question? Are you proud? Who will say that I am not proud of being an Indian? So I said, are you satisfied with the state of affairs in our country today? 40% hands went up, 60%, most of them were girls, did not go up. So we had a debate, and lots of issues came up. Those who were satisfied, they spoke about our heritage, they spoke about our culture, they spoke about all kinds of jingoistic descriptions. And if you really look at what we were and where we have traveled, we really don't have much to be proud about. You start with our Human Development Index to several other indices. The only index we are doing very well on the top is the Corruption Index. And it's a great achievement. So that is the state of affairs, and you go for every program, and we committed and recommitted, and every 5 years we recommitted only on paper that every child in this country will get quality education. And we know the statistics, we know the several reports that come on annual basis. We know the dropout rates of children. We know that the girls' dropout rates are 25 percentage point higher than that of boys, and very clearly the bias that exists in the society. And if you see, the prosperity and culture and gender has nothing to do with each other. Very interesting thing which all of you know, 1901 our gender ratio or sex ratio was 972. In 2001, 100 years later, her gender ratio was 927. This is the progress we made. We talk on paper our literacy level being 74%, and we all know how that figure has emerged in the 11th census, 2011 census. People were asked, are you literate or not literate? Whereas the international literacy definition is very different. We have several such issues, and therefore the challenge that all of you have, all of us have, is very different. And that's primarily because of the kind of society, kind of system that we have become over a period of time. The whole erosion of values that has happened. Why does execution really suffer? Execution suffers for 3-4 important factors. Number one is that there is no political will to ensure that the benefits and the programs announced to the last mile are delivered. There is no political will, because it means a certain integrity to the commitment, number one. Number two, creating enabling conditions to deliver that commitment, which means having competent people in place, having accountability mechanisms in place, and several other factors in place. We don't do that. Number two is that the whole bureaucracy that is supposed to deliver finally, that's the prime constitutional responsibility. The political masters will announce policies and benefits. The bureaucracy job is to deliver it to the masses. It doesn't deliver. And it doesn't deliver, and it is irrespective of what political party is in place. Political parties and nature of them we just find as an excuse. But really speaking, the problem has persisted too long and has crossed all the boundaries of political parties. And therefore, the issue is again there, the tenure of the IAS officer who is supposed to be the leader of that particular development is completely uncertain. We have this experience in about 7 states we are operating. We have had 15 education secretaries in 14 years. What can you expect? An important issue like health, education, water, sanitation, nutrition, what can you expect when the leader changes and the leader anyway does not have much of a perspective on what has to be done? Because he or she is not an expert in that area. Second, accountability mechanisms in the bureaucracy do not exist. There is no performance appraisal. Let's say I'll give you a figure that 50% of the students appearing for 10 standard every year fail across the country. Which means 50%, who is accountable? Nobody. At best the student himself or herself or the parents. Can you fix an education officer? Can you fix a teacher? Teacher and learning outcomes is a little problematic issue because of the kinds of conditions that exist in students' house, the diversity that exists in the classroom, the poor quality of teacher education that we have. All these issues are there. It's a very complex thing. So in the institute, all these years in the field work, you might have dealt with a case. You might have dealt with few individuals. The issues are systemic. And the tragedy is that the government, any government, I'm not blaming current government, any government is not willing to look at the structural issues that need to be radically reformed to be able to really ensure that certain things happen. And that's the tragedy. They all do. I just now, before coming here, in the institute itself, there was one particular IS officer I met, and she completely agreed. All that we are considered or that we are concerned with is lipapoti, some minor repair, minor tinkering of the system, whereas system requires radical reforms, and we are not in a political position to do that today. And that's the starting point. The second is that all the programs and all the developmental commitments that we have made, we have not invested in creating competent professionals to deliver that. And that is the importance of Tata Institute of Social Sciences. That it has invested for such a long time, 76 years, in just making or developing professionals who can actually go out and contribute in the trenches, not in the corporate boardrooms. That's the importance. So we have not invested that. So we have very poor teacher education program, very poor institutions that are present at the district, block and cluster level. We have no management at all. Being a doctor is different than having hospital management expertise, which is what you are doing here. And that's very important. And it took some effort on the part of Professor Parshuraman to really make the government accept that these are the professionals you must employ in your rural health mission. So first time, I think some 5-6 years ago, they hired people from Tata Institute of Social Sciences who have done hospital management. Now, ours is a very large system. It's a 1.28 billion kind of people. And every system, whether you take any system, it's a very large system, and managing that system itself is a very critical aspect. We have not invested in that. You go to North America, you go to UK, every university worth the salt has a school of education, has a school of livelihoods, has a school of health management. Why don't we have that? We have some standalone teacher training education institutions. 98% of them are in private. And it's a very interesting thing which you might be probably knowing. When it comes to putting a child in the school, we don't want to put our child in the government school. When it comes to taking admissions for higher education, we really try our best to get admissions in government medical college, government management colleges, government tech engineering colleges, etc., etc. It's a ulta thing. So now we have not invested in that, and therefore I can go on and on and on. But Professor Parshuraman has been very kind in giving me 15 minutes. So therefore, the responsibility on us is really high, and it was very encouraging to see the way you as a reflex action you responded to Professor Parshuraman when he said, as a part of his normal declaration, he said that therefore we expect you to hold values and bring reputation to them by your conduct and by what you do and how you contribute to the society. The kind of response you gave, you stood up and you gave, was absolutely encouraging. But it is not just, it cannot be like the government commitments. Because we are very good in committing. Yeah? There is no problem in India committing to something. The problem is in execution, especially execution to the last mile. So therefore, I think I have a few things to really request to you. One is that you must build expertise and depth, at least in one domain, one area. Go out of the way to build that expertise, because it's very important. Second, and this is something which probably we have been inherently taught in Tata Institute, is remain connected with the ground level, remain connected to the field, remain connected to people, and do not ever assume that it must be like this and therefore this is the solution that will work. That is a problem. The country has this problem. People who do not understand ground realities decide policies. Do you know the urban middle class, which must be about 15, 20 or maybe 30%, actually influences in a very major way policies for the balance 70% who have no clue as to why these policies have been decided. This connect is what you are supposed to achieve. So whichever organization, whichever body of people you are helping in determining their agenda and policy, you must bring this expertise and the ground knowledge. The third thing is again something which is very inherent here, is your indefatigable belief in pluralism. We are different people. We are a diverse country. People have different opinions. People form their opinions based on their own experiences, which are very diverse. So you can't really expect everyone to have similar views as yours. So you can't be intolerant to others' views. And I'm not talking about the intolerance that is being spoken about right now. That's again a political game. Don't fall for all that. Irrespective of which government is in place, we must have a certain agenda and faith to promote the kind of society within the constitutional framework, which is a wonderful framework, and contribute in every possible manner to actually make our country, make our society in that manner. So therefore, belief in pluralism, belief in diversity is an absolute must. We used to get really pained, when I used to travel. I'm talking about when I was in Wipro. In the US, for a big dinner hosted, the Maharashtra people will be together, the Andhra people will be together, the Tamil people will be together. It is breaking up. With your kind of a generation, it is really significantly breaking. But it must vanish. It must completely vanish. There is no place for any parochial kind of a way of thinking in our country, because we are a diverse country and we must respect. The minimum responsibility you have is to listen to the other person carefully, seriously, weigh what that person is saying, and then respond. That is the third thing. And the fourth is, do whatever you want to do it with passion. Circumstances are very difficult. They will constantly put you down. But out there, like she said, I have a lot of hope stories. We have enormous faith in the human beings and their ability and their actual basic desire to contribute positively. That's the assumption you start with. Doesn't matter however negative experiences you have, you continue with that belief, persist with that belief that every human being has an ability and a desire to do something meaningful, contribute to the society, contribute positively. So if you go with that, you will find that you will not have any stress. There is no tension. Because you believe, yes, you will get some temporary experiences to the contrary, but over a period of time you will find that that is the truth. And that must be our basic human belief. I would really urge you to remember every word of the commitment that you have made to Professor Parshuraman. And it's an individual commitment, and because he is the head of this institution, it is an institutional commitment, and it must translate into social commitment. The last point is that this is a tough period for educational institutions. There are all kinds of pressures, starting from economic, financial, ideological, all kinds of pressures operating on educational institutions across the country. An institution like this, which has enjoyed an autonomy and freedom of thought, operation, and execution for the past 76 years, should not be placed at a danger of in any manner that autonomy or freedom being jeopardized. And one of the ways to ensure that is that the alumni must take ongoing interest in the institution. And whatever, you may get 10,000 rupees salary, 40,000 rupees salary, commit about 1% of that, 2% of that, whatever you want to do, to this institution, so that it retains its freedom, its autonomy, and its continuous work in the social domain within a certain human alignment. And I think that's very important to preserve. And I would really urge you to do that, because in institutions and universities abroad, the alumni contribute significantly to the autonomy of the institution by way of financial contribution. Billions of dollars are contributed in the US and Canada by the alumni. Why can't we do that? Surely we can do that. So I think it has to be done. There's no option, because if you are committed to, because you are a product of a certain institution, you are also a product of a certain thought process, and you are a product of a certain agenda. And if you want to retain the integrity of that agenda, we have to preserve the institution so that it continues to pump in people with similar thoughts, similar agenda in the society. And that's the only way to infest the society with good people, people like you. So I would really urge you to do that. I must thank all of you having invited me here to participate in this wonderful convocation. Thank you very much and wish you all the best.